Hey everyone, we've got a lot to cover in today's weather update. As we dive into the next few days, we'll be tracking some major shifts in the weather, including some significant cold fronts, active weather, and temperature swings that are going to impact much of the United States and beyond. Whether you're prepping for some stormy weather or just curious about what's coming, I've got all the details you need to stay ahead of the changes. We start with a cold front that's sweeping down from the north and moving across the United States. As we've been forecasting, this cold front will bring with it some major shifts, especially in terms of temperatures. So here's what you can expect. Ahead of this front, the temperatures are going to rise dramatically over the next 24 hours. What we're seeing is the convergence of two very different air masses, the cold, dense air from the north and the warmer, moist air that's been surging in from the south. This clash is creating a zone of instability that's prime for the development of thunderstorms, and in some areas, we could even see severe weather. The places that are going to be most at risk for strong thunderstorms are going to be parts of the southern and central United States. We're talking about areas like Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, and Texas, where the warm, moist air is meeting the cooler air descending from the north. That difference in temperature and pressure is exactly what sets the stage for these thunderstorms. But before we get into the details, hit the subscribe button, like this video, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for your support. These storms could be quite powerful, producing heavy rainfall, gusty winds, and potentially even hail or tornadoes. So if you're in these areas, make sure to stay alert and be prepared for the possibility of severe weather. The storm systems that form ahead of this front are going to be quick moving, but they could still pack a punch. And while that system will move out of the area relatively quickly, we'll need to be mindful of the lingering conditions and any additional systems that may develop in the wake of this front. Once the cold front starts moving through, temperatures are going to drop behind it. Now, for those of you who are used to warmer weather, it's going to feel like quite a shock to the system as the cooler air settles in. You'll feel those temperatures take a sharp dip, especially if you're in the northern parts of the country, but this is just a brief cool down. The front isn't going to bring any widespread snow or ice in most areas, which is a bit of a relief for those who have been dealing with some of the more extreme winter weather in recent weeks. That said, there will be pockets of snow, particularly in the northern Midwest and parts of the Northeast. This means that while most of us won't be dealing with snowstorms, some areas could still see a light dusting or more persistent snow showers as the system moves. As we get into the weekend, the front will push further south, bringing cooler air down into the Gulf Coast, but not quite all the way down into the southernmost reaches of the U.S. So while places like New Orleans and Houston will get a taste of that cooler, drier air, the Florida Peninsula and parts of southern Texas will still hold on to milder temperatures. This will be a brief but noticeable shift in the weather, especially as we're seeing those warmer than usual temperatures over the past few days. So if you've been enjoying the mild weather, you'll want to savor it for just a bit longer before this cold front makes its move. Looking ahead to next week, we'll see temperatures start to rise again, especially in the southern half of the country. That warm-up is likely to be more sustained, which means that we'll see some areas experiencing mild or even above average temperatures. But don't get too comfortable because with the warm air, we'll also see some of those thunderstorms making a return. The warm, moist air in the lower atmosphere, combined with cooler air aloft, will create the perfect conditions for thunderstorms to develop. And with that, the risk for severe weather will remain high throughout much of the country. The West Coast, too, is going to get active as Pacific storm systems begin to move in. We're seeing some moisture pushing in from the Pacific, which will bring rainfall to places like California, Oregon, and Washington, with some higher elevation areas getting snow. The storm track is looking to favor the Pacific Northwest, which is where we'll see the most active conditions, including heavy rain and mountain snow. Some of the systems will move inland and could bring precipitation into the Rockies and the Great Basin, making for snowy and wet forecast in those areas. Back to the central U.S., things are going to remain quite dynamic. We're expecting more bouts of severe thunderstorms, particularly along and ahead of the cold fronts that will be sweeping through. These storms are often quick but intense, and you could experience strong winds, heavy rain, and frequent lightning. These conditions are expected to develop again next week, so make sure you're staying prepared, especially if you live in places that have been prone to severe weather. As for the Caribbean, conditions are going to remain fairly mild, but there will be some scattered showers over the next few days. We'll be keeping a close watch on any weak frontal systems that could impact the region, but for now, it looks like the Caribbean will remain mostly dry, with only a few areas getting rain here and there. Places like Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and parts of the Lesser Antilles will see some light, brief showers, but nothing too major. The good news for those of you in the Caribbean is that the severe weather from the U.S. Won't be pushing into your region, but do expect some cloud cover and showers as the systems move off the coast. Now, let's take a quick moment to talk about the potential for snow in the northern parts of the U.S. As that cold front moves down, there will be a window for snow to form in the colder air behind it. This won't be a huge snowstorm, but areas from the Great Lakes to parts of the Northeast and the Northern Rockies could see some accumulating snow, especially if the conditions are just right. In fact, some parts of New York, Michigan, and Wisconsin could wake up to light snow on Saturday morning, especially in the higher elevations. This isn't going to be a major snow event, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on if you're traveling through these areas. Make sure to check the latest forecast before heading out, as the snow could make roads slick and visibility poor. Looking specifically at the National Weather Service's temperature outlook for February 4th through the 8th, it shows a very interesting picture. Warmer than usual conditions will dominate the Four Corners, South Central, and Southeast U.S. This will likely push temperatures into the 60s and even 70s in some places, offering a nice respite from the colder weather we've been experiencing lately, but the cold won't be far behind. The west will be cooler, especially in the northern Rockies and northern plains, where temperatures will dip below average. This sets the stage for some pretty sharp temperature swings, so expect those to play a role in where the storms develop. As for precipitation, we can expect activity to ramp up across much of the country. The west will be particularly affected, with significant snowfall expected in the mountain ranges, especially the Rockies, Sierra Nevada, and Cascades. These regions could see feet of snow by the end of the week, which will have a huge impact on the ski resorts, transportation, and general travel conditions in those areas. But the snow won't be limited to the west. We could see heavy rain, snow, and mixed precipitation across the Midwest, Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, and Northeast. So if the temperatures drop enough in these regions, it could turn into some significant snowstorms, especially in the Northeast, which is always a hot spot for winter weather. So looking further ahead to the 8 to 14-day outlook, February 6th through 12th, we're starting to see the potential for even colder conditions. While the warmth from the previous week will still linger, the cold air is gradually pushing eastward, and that could have a big impact on places like the Plains, Midwest, and eventually the Northeast. The models are indicating that this period could bring more frequent snowstorms, particularly across the upper Midwest, Ohio Valley, and Great Lakes. The storm track could also shift, which means snow might start accumulating across more parts of the East Coast. To give you a better idea of how this all fits together, let's look at the temperature trends for the past 30 days. We've had quite a bit of cold weather across much of the country, especially in the central U.S., where temperatures have been 5 to 10 degrees below normal in many areas. This is considered an extreme anomaly, particularly because temperatures like this aren't typically seen for such an extended period of time. Many areas have been experiencing sub-freezing conditions, with the Rockies and Plains dealing with more significant cold snaps. When you see these temperature deviations over a month-long period, it's a good indication that we've been in a more extreme cold pattern. But don't worry, the warmth is on the way. As we zoom in on specific weather patterns, we can see some major storm systems forming across the United States. In fact, the first round of thunderstorms is expected to develop as early as February 1st, with areas in Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana all seeing storm activity. This could include some severe thunderstorms, particularly along a warm front pushing up into the eastern U.S. These thunderstorms are expected to track northeastward, bringing the chance for some mixed precipitation across the Great Lakes, Northeast, and Mid-Atlantic. If you're in those areas, be prepared for some snow showers and potentially icy conditions, especially if the temperatures remain chilly. By the time we hit the weekend on February 3rd and 4th, the weather will be getting even more active. A series of low-pressure systems will be moving through, bringing snow to the Rockies and Cascades, while the Midwest, Great Lakes, and Northeast will see a mix of rain and snow. The snow in these areas could accumulate with up to a foot, or more expected in some parts of the upper Midwest and Great Lakes. By the time we reach February 6th, a more intense storm system will begin to take shape in the Midwest, with heavy snow possible across the Great Lakes and Northeast. This could lead to significant disruptions for cities like Chicago, Detroit, and Cleveland, so it's something to keep an eye on. By February 8th, we could see another round of snowstorms, particularly along the East Coast. This time, it could impact cities from Boston down to New York and even further south into parts of the Mid-Atlantic. We're looking at a potential snowstorm that could leave a few inches or even a foot of snow in these areas. Meanwhile, the West will continue to see snowfall in the major mountain ranges, with significant totals in places like Colorado and Utah. These mountain ranges could see multiple feet of snow in just a few days, making for great skiing conditions, but it's also important to keep in mind the impact on travel in the region. As we move into the second week of February, the overall pattern remains active, with more storm systems expected to push through. The weather in the west will stay snowy and cold, while the central U.S. could experience a mix of both warmth and cold. This fluctuation will keep us on our toes as we track snowstorms and severe weather across the country. Looking at total precipitation for the next 2 weeks, the European model is predicting heavy moisture to move across the country, with significant precipitation expected in the northwest and extending into the central U.S. We're talking about a lot of moisture, which will result in snow, rain, and a variety of other precipitation types across a wide swath of the country. These storm systems could bring significant snowfall to the northern and western U.S., with heavy snow accumulations possible in the Rockies, Sierra Nevada, and Cascades. The GFS model is showing similar trends but suggests slightly less snowfall in the Midwest and Northeast compared to the European model. When it comes to temperatures, the next couple of weeks will be a mix of warmth and cold. We'll see some mild days, particularly in the southeast and east coast, but cold air will also make its way into the northern and central U.S. The key thing to remember is that this is going to be a back and forth pattern, so don't be surprised by drastic temperature swings as we head into February. This could mean everything from mild days with sunshine to snowstorms and freezing temperatures within the span of a few days. So what can we take away from all this? The weather for the first part of February is shaping up to be dynamic, with a lot of back and forth between warm spells and cold surges. The storms will be active, and there's a real chance for some major snowstorms and severe weather across various regions. The West will continue to be snowy. The Midwest and Northeast could see several rounds of snow and mixed precipitation, and the Southeast and East Coast will get a break of warmer weather before another cold blast arrives. That's it for today's video. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you found this forecast helpful. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Let me know in the comments where you're located and what you're expecting in your area. If you have any questions or thoughts on the forecast, drop them below. I love hearing from all of you. And as always, stay safe out there, keep an eye on the weather, and I'll catch you in the next video.